Well, welcome everybody to this edition of Walking in Spirit of Truth. This is John Craig and Sandy and my wife and I, pastor Life of Worship Ministries here in Amarillo, Texas. And we get to have an opportunity every Tuesday evening to join you with you and discuss the scriptures. And we missed y'all last week. We had a conflict in our schedules, but we're back this week with a live edition. I have some questions for you. And one of those questions is, do you or have you ever heard of the Book of Giants? The Book of Giants. Like, what are you talking about? Aren't we here to talk about scriptures and all that sort of stuff? Yeah, it's very interesting because these peripheral books that were part of the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found are very interesting because I think it gives us perspective in regards to how some of the scriptures discuss things that involve us in the earth. And that's why I'm bringing this up this evening. And I just find it very interesting. One, I find it interesting. I hope you do too as well. And I'd really like for y'all to be part of that discussion. So what's going on here at Life of Worship? Well, we got a lot of things going on here. And if you've ever want to join us live for our tour portions, or if you want to catch us on the archives, you can go to Life of Worship Ministries on our YouTube channel, and you can always pick up our archives. You can pick up our past shows, our prior shows on Walking in Spirit and Truth, where I did a whole series on 4 Ezra. If you haven't listened to that, it was an amazing journey, and who Ezra is. It kind of explains his heart. It also gives insight that I think just parallels so many different things that Yeshua told us regarding, and John tells us in the book of Revelation of things that Yahweh opened up to him. I mean, it's just amazing. Even Daniel, that was really, there's all these different parallels that you pull in when we went through that whole study of 4 Ezra. So I hope you'd like to go back and check on that. Also, Pastor Sandy has gone in and she has uploaded a number of other things that was part of messages from our prior Sukkots. Those things are timeless and they're not just simply related to the very time that we're in. So you might find some messages in there that will be very uplifting and motivating and encouraging and strengthening to your faith and all of that. And so go back in. Sandy has uploaded a whole bunch to our network, as well as some of our skits that we do at Sukkot. And a lot of them are just they're just funny. They make you laugh. And and I'm telling you, I mean, we're not professional actors, but I tell you, the folks we have at Life of Worship that did the skits just did a tremendous job. And I just give kudos to everyone that's participated with that. I think Pastor Sandy also has uploaded her Psalm 91 series. That was a really, really good study on Psalm 91 and her Psalm 23 study as well. So check that on our YouTube channel. And if you've missed any of our messages lately or any of our series on the priesthood, the Zadok priesthood, the calendar, and all of that, that whole series is up on our YouTube channel as well. Okay. Oh, by the way, I want to give you an update. We did have our rally. It ended up being about 3:00 on Monday afternoon. So, I was talking about that on Shabbat and in the war room on Monday morning. And it was just, it was supposed to be at 9:30, and then it got pushed back to noon and pushed back to 2, and then it got pushed back to 3. But we did have our gathering. And if you'll go to the Life of Worship Facebook page, I posted a link over there that actually gives our little gathering. I mean, because it's such short notice, even the people that we had, a lot of them couldn't make it at that point in time in the day. And I almost did make it. And then I also have a recording of it that I'm going to have Sandy edit and take some of the wind noise out of it so you can hear the presentation better by Mark Dixon, who is the head of Sanctuary Cities for the Life of the Unborn. I think that's what. I'm going to pull out his card. I got his card in my pocket. And yeah, here it is. It is right here. I don't know if you can see that. Sanctuary Cities for the Unborn. And And his website, if you want to go there, it's called www.sanctuarycitiesoftheunborn.com. Let me see if I can. You can see it right there. There you go. Yeah, check that out. Rewind it if you need to, and you can write that down and go to it. And so he's from East Texas and has done a lot for the sanctuary cities of the unborn all over the state of Texas. So this is what they found out, and this is what the whole thing was about. So I'm going to get a little clip in here because I think I can keep it and not. I have to self censor. I hate having to self censor, but so here's what it is. There's a place, and it's called Biocycle. It's here in Amarillo, and it's part of a larger company called Encore. And yeah, right here in Amarillo, Texas. And then there's also another location down in Irving, Texas. And you can look it up. You can go to biocycle.com and see what the company does. And they'll tell you that they are a medical waste management company and that they reach out to a whole bunch of different states. And what happened, and this is what the interview was about, this is what the breaking news was about, was they there was a gentleman that went out to this site and was at the gate, and he was looking at the facility at the gate and was looking around to see what all was going on in there, because they gotten a hint of an understanding of what was happening there. So they found it. It's here in Amarillo. They went out there, was looking at it, and a truck pulled up. It's a reefer truck, and a reefer truck is a refrigerated semi, so a refrigerated trailer on a semi, and so he was looking at us, and the guy pulls up and he says, "Yeah, I was, um, you know, I was just out here. I was wondering what all went on out here at this operation," and the driver they picked up a conversation. People out here in West Texas are pretty friendly, and they were talking. And the driver ended up telling them, "Yeah, I just picked up a load from this location in Wichita, Kansas, where they remove babies." Let me just say that. You know what I'm talking about. They remove babies, and those babies are no longer living because they've been removed. And so once a month we go. This guy goes up to Wichita, Kansas, and picks up a load of these babies that have been removed, and they're loaded onto this refrigerated truck, and they're brought back here to Amarillo, Texas. And then at this site, what happens is they drop the babies off, the bodies, right? And because you know what I'm talking about, and they put them on a conveyor belt that processes them through a machine, and and when they process through the machine, it just let's just say it puts them into small pieces. And from there, we're really not sure what goes on. Now, they process other medical, bio waste, like whatever they pick up at hospitals that have to be disposed of, whether it's, blood fragments, needles, all that sort of stuff. All that's processed here at this place as well. And but these bodies are too, and they're bringing in them from multiple states, and they're bringing them in as far as from California and Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, and they're being processed in Amarillo. And that's why we're pushing that Amarillo, Texas become a sanctuary city for the unborn, so they can stop trafficking in the bodies of these babies here in Amarillo. And by the way, it is actually against the law to do that. It's against the law to do that here in Texas. And yet they're still being processed in Amarillo and down in Irving by this company. And that is what the breaking news is. And this is like, it's one of those well-kept secrets, sadly. And that this is going on where what happened is that the there is a pro life group up there in Wichita, Kansas that that goes to the big um, location, begins with a P, deals with parenthood, has nothing to do with parenthood. You know what I'm saying? And that parking lot's always full with cars from Oklahoma and Texas, with Texas plates, Oklahoma plates, and because Oklahoma has banned abortions as well as Texas, and so people are just being the women are being trafficked up to Kansas, and they're doing their best to get those laws to be passed in Kansas as well, but they're being trafficked up there, and then they're bringing the babies back to Amarillo, and that's what we broke. That's what we broke yesterday. So it's on our Facebook page, and you can go and check that out. I did put it. I shared a link over there. I put it on my personal Facebook page, and this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we as believers need to be more than just warming a pew, so to speak, on Shabbat, or whatever. We need to study the Word so that our faith can be strengthened and encouraged, and then we have to then say, okay, how do we take this word and preserve life? And that's what it's about. That's what it's all about. And I, 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 I mean, I don't even know how to talk about it right now because I'm literally just literally horrified, and I'm horrified that they even do this. And yet, in my mind, I knew that they do it. But then, when it comes to our own backyard, and know that it's happening right here in my city, and then I think about the curse that it brings to the city, and where the blood of the innocent cries out. You think the blood of the innocent cries out in Wichita, Kansas, where this is taking place, and the blood of the innocent cries out in Amarillo because these babies, they're not memorialized, they are not given a proper burial, they're treated no differently than a needle or a device or a piece of equipment that would be used in a hospital that's one-time use only, and then has to be disposed with as a biohazard waste and thrown into this particular bin that's picked up by a company like Biocycle, and then disposed of, and then that's what they're doing with these babies, and that is why it's horrific. It's dehumanizing. It is actually it's monstrous, and that's why I went out there. That's why I had to be part of that. Now you won't see me in the picture because I'm the one that's holding the camera. Somebody needed to hold the camera so that we could make sure it got broadcast out there. So Mark Dixon has a Facebook page too, and we did it on his Facebook live when we were out there, but I took that and shared it on the Life of Worship channel, the International House of Prayer of Amarillo, a Facebook page, which is our second Facebook um, here that we have at Life of Worship, and then we have my personal Facebook. And so I'm almost without words. I'm stumbling over my words because it infuriates me, and then it just horrifies me, and I I have some very strong feelings and want to have some semblance of keeping my composure. But um, guys, you think it's like, well, what about your city? What about your city? Is it happening in your city? I and or what they're doing here in Amarillo is, a young woman finds out that she is pregnant, and then is concerned about it, and there are people here in Amarillo that will say, "Oh, come over here, I, let's talk." And these people in Amarillo will escort these women out of state to have their babies removed, and then bring them back, and it is a trafficking of the unborn. in order to remove them from life. And so this is really big. So you think what's going on the southern border of Texas and Arizona and Mexico. New Mexico's never in the news when it comes to crossing the southern border. It's just like, is anything happening in New Mexico, or they just go to Arizona, California, and Texas? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, just as horrifying as that is with just a complete invasion there. Well, this is a whole nother realm, and nobody's talking about it. And yeah, Joe, you know, they have no voice. So we need to be a voice. We need to be a voice for them. And guess what? Here's the other thing. And I know I've had these conversations, and it's like, well, if I don't do it, you know, it's like, well, you're putting the target on your back. Okay. But if the And it's like, you know, and I have to think about my family. I have to think about my granddaughter. I have to think about my son, and, you know, all the different things that we've had to go through in the last 5, 7 years, and just things that, you know, I don't want to do anything that would just hurt any of that. I have to think about the congregation. And yet on the other side of it is, if all I do is come in and warm a seat on Shabbat, and yeah, okay, I've got a role to play that I have here at Life of Worship. But if that's all I do, then um, then am I really, really fulfilling my role as a person, as an individual, as an individual believer, and one who can be a voice for our community? You know, I think about that. Well, you're a voice for the community because you're sitting here, and you've got the congregation, and you know, do teaching and preaching, and, you know, all the different things that go along with the congregation, and you know, go to the hospital, and prayer, and all, you know, all those things go with it. But on the other hand, but there's more to us of being a believer, and that's just my role here. Everybody can have a role to play. And and but what if it never goes outside the walls? Well, because isn't learning Torah about the preservation of life? I mean, I think there's a theme that I've always heard when we've been in following Torah. And if there's a theme that we've ever followed, and one of that theme is always this, is it's about preservation of life. Because one of the questions, you know, early on in studying Torah, you know, we learned about Shabbat and keeping Shabbat, and how the Shabbat, you know, it's the wedding ring, and and it shows that covenant that we have with Yeshua, showing that, yeah, we want to be um, the bride, and that we're waiting for that time for our bridegroom to come back, and he's building a house for us, and our wedding, and that ring is that, like the engagement ring, and we're just and that's Shabbat. That's what Shabbat's about. And it's like, and he gave us that Shabbat so that we can rest, and we can be rejuvenated, and all of that fun stuff. And and so, but, you know, you think, well, okay, so we want to make sure, we want to do our very best. I know we live in Babylon. I know we live in Egypt, and the slave masters and the taskmasters make a lot of people work on that day. And we think, well, how do we navigate through that? I mean, these are all different things. Well, we pray that our work schedules will work out so where we can get Shabbat off, whatever industry we're in. And, you know, we say no to overtime on Shabbat so that we can keep the integrity of that day. And then, so the next question is, well, what about law enforcement? What about hospital workers, ambulance workers? What about military? And so, but this is where everybody understands. I mean, think about even the people that work within, you know, if you think biblically speaking, the priesthood and the Levites and all that, you know, that was a day they were working. Um, but what was the purpose of working on that day? Because it's those type of those people within those categories, those type of professions. Why are they working? Well, they're working to preserve life. They're there to preserve life. And so you think, okay, so one of the main tenets of following Torah is preserving life. And so then that's why causes for life are a big priority. And so those causes for preserving life. So if you're driving down the road and you see somebody that, they have a flat tire, they're stranded in the middle of the street, or, they're stuck, or maybe something, you can pull over and lend them a hand and help change the tire or push the car out of the roadway or something like that. I mean, stuff like I've done that before, but you pull up and you're driving down the road and you see a car have an accident and roll over in the middle of it. Was Sandy and I've seen that happen before. We stop on the highway and we run out to see what we can do to lend a hand, because we need to preserve life. Call 911, whatever it takes, whoever can help out. And we know that principle within our society. And so some of those things we already understand, but yet those things that we're not confronted with in an everyday life, like the trafficking of the unborn, where it's like, well, it's not in my particular little circle of influence, so therefore I don't relate to it very well. And that's why I wanted to be part of this on yesterday, where I could go out there and then also then inform our community and let everybody know this is part of the industry. This is what's happening. There are political movements behind the scene. There are social movements behind the scene that will not release it, in spite of what the Supreme Court said when they struck down Roe versus Wade, and they remanded Roe versus the question of abortion back to the states, and then they would let the states decide on how it be handled. So I do live in a state where they decided not to do that, not to take the life of the unborn, but give that baby a chance in life. And yet, so the industry says, wait a minute, we're losing out on funds, we're losing out on money, we're losing out on influence. Because you think about this. Why, for how many years, since 1972, up until the Supreme Court did this thing, how much impact did movements for the cause of life have? Honestly, none, absolutely zero. Because why? Candidates would use that as part of their platform, that they're the pro-life candidate or they're the pro-death candidate, just depending on either side. It was only about raising funds. It was just a fundraiser. And that's a big part of their funding would come from people that said, I want to preserve life. I want to make sure this candidate gets in. And until finally, through the court system, it actually made its way up to the Supreme Court, and they accepted it to make a ruling on it. And then it was remanded back to the states, which was the right thing to do. But now you have candidates that are still out there that say, no, now we've got to fight it to bring it back and make it a federal law. And they're going to still use that as a political platform to raise money. But in order also to do that, they also have to continue the industry. However it is, they don't care what state it's in, whether it's a state that's a sanctuary state or not. I mean, that's just the way it is. And so this is not to be political. This is saying, guys, we need to be pro. We need to preserve life. How's that for saying that? We need to preserve life. And, it's kind of sad, because I was watching the numbers of who's been joining us here, and we had several more people that had joined us online, and people just jumped off. They didn't want to hear what was going on. I don't understand that, but thank you all for staying with me as I was kind of describing what's been happening and what's going on. And I know I was like, we're going to get into the Book of Giants and we can get that started, but I wanted to share with you an update of what happened yesterday. And so that's just step one. And we're, y'all need to be praying for us here in Amarillo, because we are out for, as of West Texas, you have Plainview, which is a city with about 25,000 people in it. You have, they're a sanctuary city for the unborn. You have Lubbock, Texas, has over 200,000. Abilene, Texas, about 150,000. You have Midland, which is around 150,000 people down there. Those major cities in West Texas, they're all sanctuary cities for the unborn. Amarillo is not there. And I don't know, is it because we're too close? We're too close to these other, blue states? I don't think that's the case, because one of our counties that's part of Amarillo is the number one conservative county in the entire United States. And so I'm frustrated that the community in Amarillo is too scared to talk about it. And get this. Okay, I'm just sharing my heart tonight. Get this. At Life of Worship, we have weathered a lot of different storms. And it just seems like we continue to weather storms. And maybe some of our friends here in Amarillo will listen to me when I'm talking about this and know my heart. And, stop being so judgy. I don't mean, and I'm not trying to poke at you or anything like that. I'm just saying, I want you to hear my heart. When we first started Life of Worship Ministries back in 2005, we started in our living room, and we expanded, and we ended up going to a park, and then we went to a hotel, and then we went to the facility, actually where we're at right now. From there, we went to a much larger facility until they raised our rent extraordinarily after the landlord died. And so we came back to this facility that we're in right now. And in this course of time, we packed out the place that we were in, and we, and not saying that that was a great thing or not. It's like, well, thank you, Father, for bringing so many different people across our paths that have been part of our life. One of the things that we were accused of during the first time we were at this facility was that we worship too much. We worship too much. And then we were accused of being too Jewish, because we said, you know what, we're not going to do, we're not doing Christmas, we're not doing Easter, we're going to keep the feast days. And so we were accused of being too Jewish. And then we were accused of we started keeping Shabbat. We lost a lot of people when we started keeping Shabbat. We didn't do any transition. I mean, we just went from Sunday church to Saturday church, and people just were like overnight. I mean, 80% of our congregation gone. And then we were accused of, speaking too much about Bible prophecy. Too much Bible prophecy. You can talk about other things. Why you always talk about end time stuff? We lost people because of, there's different phases that we go through. And it's just kind of like this wind. We follow this wind where we feel led to do it, but apparently, we got accused of that. So people stopped coming. And then we went through another part where I just learned this. We talked about current events too much. Now I'm going to tell you something. Why did, because I've done uncensored news, and I had our own special uncensored news that was right after Walking in Spirit of Truth. We did all of these different programs, and here on the Lamb Network, we talk about that. But we try to stay very well rounded, and in all of it. And why do we try to stay well rounded? Because if we don't understand how relevant our faith is to the current world that we live in, then what good is our faith? If we can't take situations and events that are taking place and say, okay, this is for awareness, but this is for us, and these relate to our faith, because here we're going to teach Torah so that our faith can be strengthened when the winds of change affect us. And it's very important that we have a balance there. And in fact, I remember having a pastor. He was a pastor of a Nazarene church. This is years and years and years and years ago, probably back in the early 90s. And And the guy would take, like events that were happening in the headlines, and the message was like, wow, I can relate my faith to these events, and now I can build my biblical worldview around this life that I'm living in. Okay. And so we've been accused of you know, talking too much about current events. And it's like, I rarely talk about that type of stuff, but um, there are times that there's been more injected into it than not. But why? Why would I even inject it? And why would I relate sermons to it or Torah portions to it or anything like that? It's because uh, if we don't know, we'll be blindsided. What good are we as a people if we don't understand that current events are happening all around us and it's related to the end times? And the next thing you know, all of a sudden you have the hammer coming down because of regulations that, well, I didn't know about those regulations. Well, then what am I as a pastor not preparing you for those type of things, or saying, hey, let's put the rubber to the road. Let's put our faith into action and and contact our congressmen or our senators and say, hey, I disagree with what's going on. I want you to be my voice, my representative, and so that we can build a movement and maybe stop some of these things that are actually anti-life, anti-family, anti-health, where I'm going with. So these are all related to where we're at and what we're experiencing. So bringing this all back around full circle, this also relates to why we did what we did yesterday. So anyway, that's all of it in a nutshell. And y'all be praying for us. I in fact, on Let Us Reason Together yesterday, you know what, I brought up these verses. I don't know if I still have them on my phone. I might still have them on my phone. Let me pull them up. It talks about being salty. Be salty, everyone. That's a good way to always end a program. Wouldn't that be a great way to be salty, everyone? Here it says that Matthew 5:13. So if you were listening to Let Us Reason Together in the Uncensored News on yesterday, you would have heard these verses already, but it's worthwhile to bring them up again. And it says, Matthew 5:13, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its flavor, with what will it be salted? It is then good for nothing, but to be cast out and trampled under people's feet. In other words, if you and I are not salty, then what uses of it is your pavement. Back in the day, they'd actually throw it, take unusable salt, and they'd actually use it for pavement. Think about that. And you wonder why the world walks on top of us. Because we've lost our savor. We lost our ability to season the world we live in. And so the world walks on top of us. We are pavement. That's what Matthew 5:13 is talking about. How about this one? Mark 9:49. Oh, I didn't read this the other day, but it does relate. For everyone will be salted with fire, and every sacrifice will be salted with salt. I know it's out of context, but let me see what the rest of that version is. Salt is good. But if salt has lost its saltiness, how can you make it salty? Have salt in yourself and be at peace with one another. So there's the rest of the verse. And have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another. So how do you get salty? I think it has to relate to studying the Torah, right? It's a matter of the application of Torah in our everyday lives. So what do? You understand the current events that are happening around you. Yes, like what we found out at this place here in Amarillo, and then going out there and doing something about it, like getting the news out, making awareness, let our city know what's happening. In fact, by the way, why not tell everybody that you know in the area that you're at and say, can you believe this is happening in Amarillo, Texas, which is in one of the most conservative or the most conservative county in all of the United States, and this is happening, and it's all part of an industry, and where they show no respect for the bodies of the unborn. And by the way, the county that this one is in adjacent. It's adjacent to the most conservative county. It's in Potter County, and it's pretty conservative as well, but it's not as conservative, but it's still pretty conservative because we are in, like, our representative Ronnie Jackson. He is our representative in Congress, and it said that his district is the most conservative district within the United States. So there you can kind of know where that's at. And then, so have salt in yourselves. Well, how do you know that salt is salty? Do you ever think about that? How do you know that salt is salty? Or how do you know that salt is not salty? Well, you have to taste it, right? So I want to ask you, if anybody tastes you, so to speak, is it bland? Are you bland, or are you salty? Are you giving flavor to that food? In fact, yesterday I had some white corn tortilla chips. Yeah, I did. I do like chips. I'm telling you, I do like chips. White corn tortilla chips. If you have Santitas, it was Santita brand. You say, oh, that's got, it's pretty clean. It's just probably the corn is just not GMO. It's not a non-GMO corn. It's not a non-GMO corn, but nevertheless, I like them. Generally, they're kind of salty. These tortilla chips were not salty. Like, they're not salty. So think about it. Are you salty? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another. If you're not salty, what is there to like about you? Did I say that? I mean, I think about that. If I'm not salty, then what's there to like about me? I'm not saying that I want to be a people pleaser, but who's really tasting? Would it Yahweh is, we read that scripture about taste and see that Yah is good. Well, how do we taste and see that he's good? But could the reverse be true? Can Yah say of us, I'm going to taste and see if you are good? Are we salty enough for him? And then Luke 14:34 says, salt is good. Tov. Salt is tov. Cannot improve upon it. But if the salt becomes flat and tasteless, with what do you season it with? And yeah, Joe, I agree with you. Salt also burns, because if you got some open wounds, it does burn. And, maybe because, when we worshiped, it was salt in people's wounds, and they just didn't want to worship like that. It just didn't feel good. Maybe when we kept Shabbat, when we were being accused of being too Jewish, maybe it was rubbing salt into wounds. It didn't feel good. And so you're either going to do one of two different things. You're going to wash that salt off and walk away so you never get seasoned again by a person that is being salty, or you're going to allow that salt to heal you, right? Because salt is a healing agent, and it's also a preservation agent. And that's why we have to be salty, because what are we trying to do? We're trying to preserve life. We're trying to preserve our culture. We're trying to preserve our communities, because ultimately what happens when a community is not preserving itself? and it's allowing an industry like this to take place. I really think it's like, y'all gives us all these opportunities to be salty, to season our communities, to preserve our communities. Say, well, you're not doing it. So I guess the only thing that I can do is like what he says here in Luke 9:49, if everyone will be salted with fire and every sacrifice will be salted with salt. Salt is good. Everyone will be salted with fire. So, but what happens if, there's no saltiness? Then it's going to get thrown out. It's going to be trampled on, and ultimately destruction. What happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? Destruction came upon them because they allowed for injustice. It's more than just, the perversion going on. It was, and I guess this you would consider what's happened here in Amarillo a type of perversion, but I would say more so it is it's an injustice, right? It's an injustice, and so it's I just have to say I think those verses are really they're very sobering. And so how does our faith get put into action? And what are we going to do to be able to live out our lives and say, Father, I hope I bring savor to you, that when you taste and see me, you'll see that I am good. I hate, it's really hard to say. It's like, I'm not trying to say that in an arrogant way, because I understand tov, and the word tov means good. It's a good that you cannot improve upon. And, and I understand the very fact is, but by the blood of Yeshua, but by his great mercy and his loving kindness, that we're even allowed to have the life that we have. I mean, honestly, you think about that. It's just life, and life that we have, the very breath of life is because of the mercy of Yah. And we walk according to his grace and according to that strength and that the power to overcome. And so he does allow us. And because every one of us, he's like, hey, I've designed you for this. I really, honestly, somebody say, well, I'm not a good speaker. That's okay. You don't have to be a great speaker. Maybe like what we needed yesterday was bodies. Wouldn't it have been great? I mean, originally we thought we were going to be able to get 20 to 30 people there. We were hoping, but because of the time changes and the delays and stuff, and people's work days and being able to coordinate, and then short notice, it's like there was those that just couldn't make it. They couldn't get there, and so there's no blame on them, but. And the circumstances were as they were, and the ones that could make it were the ones that were able to make it. But just think, what if whenever there's something like this that takes place in our community, and it doesn't matter if people are Torah believers or not, it doesn't matter, because you think about what is the purpose, and our purpose in life is to preserve life. Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, this whole mission of sanctuaries, cities for the unborn, the whole purpose of this is it doesn't matter what your background is, but if you believe in the purpose and the cause, and you think, I think this is a God thing, I think this is something that God's doing, then we can be part of it, and we can lend our voices to it. So I know I've kind of gone on and on about this, and I know we're out of time, and I was going to talk about the Book of Giants because it's really rather interesting. So maybe we're just going to have to put it next week. But if there's anything that I could have said and really injected into our conversation this evening was, all right, what are we doing? What can we do? And you think about it, what can I do today that's going to make a difference for the kingdom? What can I do today, even if it's just a little part, but if my little part is combined with somebody else's little part, that's combined with somebody else's part, now there's 3. And all of our parts together can make a greater impact. What can we do today, tomorrow? Maybe it's just like, well, my way my schedule is, my ability for transportation is, or I've got certain limitations physically or whatever. Well, what can I do? With these limitations, you write them out. These are my limitations. So now, what can I do to work around those limitations? Can I write? Can I make phone calls? Can I contact my representatives? Am I able to gather other people that can go on my behalf? That if I can't go, who can I send? Can I be a spark or a firebrand for somebody else that can be my mouth, can be my mouthpiece, can be my hands, can be my feet? Is there, what is it that I'm stirred up about, that is more than just and I'm not saying just than the studying Torah, studying the word, building this relationship that we have with y'all. What is it then that can be ignited in me that is contagious? Maybe there's something that's happening out there that has affected me, infected me, so to speak, in a good way. Like this has infected me. I mean, this stirred me. Now I got to fan the flame. Why did it stir me? Because maybe there's a purpose in it for us. Maybe that's where our salt is. And so, and that's where I want to say, let's figure this out and stir ourselves up, stirring one another up as, in faith and in good works, and let's be a light and let's be salty. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you for bearing with me as I was sharing my heart this evening and sharing some things that maybe will stir some things in you. So, with that said, I'll have to say shalom and be salty.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.